As you can tell by the title of this video and by this hat, today I have a dark witchy book recommendations video for you guys. First and foremost, hello friends, thank you so much for being here. My name is Kim if you are new here. I am an author as well as an illustrator, and here on my channel I love to create videos about books, about writing projects that I'm working on, and about just living a cozy and intentional life. Before we get into today's video, friends, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who kindly left a message on my last video. I shared a very intimate message on there about living in the now and sort of my living situation, and it was very eye-opening how many of you guys related to that message, and I'm just so happy to hear that that was a message that you guys also needed to hear. So I just want to say thank you for sharing your story with me, as well as thank you to everyone who said hi on the comments and mentioned where they are tuning from. I've been having a flux of new subscribers, and like I mentioned in my last video, it is something that is very emotional, very motivating, because I feel like I'm finding my people, and that feeling just feels so great. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for even taking some time out of your day to watch this video. It really means the world to me. On that note, if you are not subscribed, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. I have lots of cozy content coming your way that I just cannot wait to share. Now friends, initially this was not the video that I planned to make for this week, but considering how life turned out, this is the video that I did not know I really wanted to make. The initial video that I was supposed to do for this week was a spooky reading vlog. However, life said no. So you'll see that spooky reading vlog in maybe 2 weeks or so, because next week I have a really fun video for you guys. I am going somewhere really cool and I'm going to share that experience with you guys. So friends, witches, if there is something that you need to know about me, it is that I am fascinated with witches. I grew up in a very, let's say, spiritual household, and my grandmother was a tarot reader and her mother was also a tarot reader, and the cool thing about that is that I actually inherited my great-grandmother's and also my grandmother's tarot cards. And so I've always been very fascinated with the occult and anything witchy. I love learning about the history of witches and spirituality, and so I figured that my YouTube channel would not be my channel if I didn't have a whole video dedicated to witchy book recommendations. Now if you know me, you know that I love anything that is dark cottagecore, dark academia, and so the vibes of these books, friends, are very much that, I want to say. We got some historical fiction on here, we have some dark fantasy, we have some magical realism on here. So those are the vibes, friends. And I'm very much of a vibe reader, and these books, friends, are books that are just giving off the vibe that I so very much love. So friends, today I have 13 witchy book recommendations that I am planning to read for this spooky season. These are books that I have yet not read and that have been on my TBR waiting for their moment for the fall season, which is very much now. So I'm very excited, and I figured that I would be a little clever and choose 13 books, considering that we are having a Friday the 13th in September. I mean, you guys get it, right? Friday the 13th, 13 witchy book recommendations. I know, I'm having a blast here, friends. Of course, I had to wear the witchy hat for the purpose of this video, and I don't know if I'm gonna take it off for the rest of the day or the rest of fall on that matter. All right, friends, so if you love these vibes here, then grab something cozy and warm to drink, grab your blanket, grab the snacks, and let's have some chats about 13 dark witchy books that I feel you should read this fall spooky season. Now I'm gonna start off with the only anthology sort of short story book that I have here that I want to continue actually reading for this fall spooky season, because I have started reading this, and that is Missing Witches. This is by Risa, Dickens, and Amy Torek. The subtitle is Recovering True Histories of Feminist Magic. Now, like I mentioned, I am a huge fan of learning about the history of witches, learning about previous people who have called themselves witches, anything of the occult, anything witchy. I am a sucker for that information. So Missing Witches is an anthology of short stories of previous people throughout our history who would call themselves or who have called themselves witches, and sort of their story behind the term witches, why they label themselves as witches, and what their witchy practices are. This has been such a beautiful book to read. I love learning about a variety of historical people who label themselves as witches, and the cool thing about anthologies is that there is no pressure to have to finish the book itself. This has been a book that I have been reading for like the past year or so, and I sort of just pick it up, drop it off, and you know, pick it up wherever I left off, whether it's a week from now, whether it's a few months from now. So every chapter in this book is titled after a particular historical person throughout our history, and the author says a little bit about them, and I believe they tie it to a season and why they're related to that particular season, which I think is very clever and fun. So I'm excited to continue reading that this fall spooky season. Now moving on to novels. The first book that I plan to read this fall spooky season is The Familiars by Stacey Halls. I actually thrifted this book, and as soon as I read the synopsis, I was like, that is something so up my alley. I believe this is a historical fiction novel. Yes, it is. So it says that this is set against the real Pendle Witch trials, and the author actually draws its characters from actual historical figures as it explores the lives of 17th century women. So in this story, we are following our main character, whose name is Fleetwood, and Fleetwood is, I believe, a noblewoman who is married to this, I don't know, nobleman, is that what you call them? I don't know, someone important. And Fleetwood hasn't had the best of luck with conceiving or bringing her pregnancy to a full term. I believe one day when she does become pregnant, she actually seeks out the help of this midwife, and the woman's lives become sort of intertwined when one of them, I believe, is accused of being a witch. I feel like that is super interesting for me, because I feel like, yes, throughout our history, a lot of midwives were accused of witchcraft. I don't know if the midwife in this story is the one that is accused. I'm assuming, just because it is something that throughout our history is something that has been heard of. And I find that super interesting, because in my culture, I've heard the stories very much. Women who practice midwifery, who are midwives or doulas, because they have sort of more nature-based, earth-based practices when it comes to pregnancy or the woman's body, they were accused of witchcraft because of the sort of practices they had. So this is something that I'm very much interested in reading, because I can totally correlate this to my own culture. And also, I'm a huge sucker for historical novels, and this I just can't wait to read. Moving on to another book that I found at the thrift store, and that is A Witch in Time by Constance Sawyers. I actually had never heard of this book, but as soon as I read the blurb, you guys, I was like, I need to get this. This is actually pitched as a perfect book for fans of Outlander. And if you guys know me, you guys know that I am a huge fan of the Outlander series. I believe it's just such a beautiful masterpiece, the storyline. And I'm talking about Outlander, the series, the show. I haven't read the books, which I want to. But the show itself is just so immaculate. It has just beautiful vibes, the way that it's filmed, beautiful. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is that this is perfect for fans of Outlander, because it also has to do sort of with time travel, but not really, because the main character in this story is actually immortal. So in this novel, we are following our main protagonist, whose name is Juliet. And Juliet was cursed with immortality when she fell in love with someone's husband. So of course, we can already tell who probably casted this curse. So I believe we are following Juliet throughout a span of decades as she is cursed with this immortality curse. And I believe there comes a point, like many decades later where she might finally be able to break this curse. I am a huge fan of sort of time traveling and immortality. I love when the trope is immortality. Give me all of those vibes. And I think that's because I really loved The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, which also has to do with immortality, and it was beautiful. So I'm excited to read A Witch in Time. Now this next book is not based during the fall season. Actually, I don't even know if any of the ones that I've already recommended are based during the fall autumn season, but this next one is definitely not based in the autumn season. This is actually based in the spring season. But as soon as I read the word seances in the back of the book, I was like, immediately add to cart. So I recently picked up The Witches of New York by Amy McKay. First and foremost, I want to frame this cover. This cover is just gorgeous. So I believe this is also a historical fiction novel set in New York City in the spring of 1818. And we are following two of our main characters whose names are Adeline and Eleanor, who own a tea shop where they also hold spiritual assignments for select society ladies, and they also provide cures and apparently seances. And one day our tea owners put out a sign that they're hiring someone for their tea shop, and they end up hiring this young girl named Beatrice. And Beatrice doesn't know that she also has gifts herself, and so they hire her, they take her under her wing until Beatrice starts, I think, feeling or experiencing dark things. Yeah, Beatrice might go to the dark side. All I know is that this book has seances, you guys, and that is enough for me to add to cart. The next book that I am planning to read that I also actually got at the thrift store, I've had a good luck with finding great books at the thrift stores, and that is Winterwood by Shea Ernshaw. This one is set in the winter season, which for me is totally fine because, I mean, it's technically already fall. We might as well also start reading about winter themed books. And I believe in this book we are following our main protagonist, whose name is Nora, and Nora comes from a long line of witches who have a deep connection to these creepy, eerie, dark woods. They sort of know what lives at the woods. They know all about the woods, but they've always they've known in the back of their head but never kind of wanted to admit it, until one day this boy goes missing, and weeks, months later, I forgot how long, he ends up turning up alive, and people are questioning how can he be alive when he went missing was during a very severe snowstorm, so he should technically be dead. So Nora has to come face to face with the realities of what actually lives in the woods, and I don't know. That's all I know, you guys. All I know is that this has creepy dark woods, and again, that is enough for me to, yes, you guys guessed it, add to cart. The next book, you guys, that I want to read, that I tried to read already once, and I borrowed the audiobook for it and it accidentally got returned. Well, not accidentally, I guess I went over my 30-day span and then it got automatically returned. And that is Thistlefoot by GennaRose Nethercott. This is a chunky boy, and when it comes to chunky boys, they sort of give me just a little bit of anxiety because they're pretty big, and when that's the case, I usually opt to just getting the audiobook. That way I can read along and not feel super intimidated by the size of the book. So that's what I did, and then, you know, it got returned. But this fall spooky season, I do want to read this book because I am obsessed with folklore. Anything that has to do with folklore, especially witchy folklore, I am all on it. And this is actually based on the Russian folklore of Baba Yaga, who is initially a witch who lives in a house with chicken legs. That is right, chicken legs. That's why this house has chicken legs. So in this story, we are following two descendants of Baba Yaga herself, who are siblings, twins, something like that. And Baba Yaga has died, and so these two siblings, who are descendants of her, inherit her house that has chicken legs. So I believe the siblings don't have a good relationship with each other, so this does explore a lot of sibling dynamics. And one day they get a letter saying that Baba Yaga, their great-great-grandmother or aunt, I don't know, has died, and they have inherited the house, the infamous house with chicken legs, and they need to travel to where the house is to claim it. However, there are other people who want to claim this house, and so the siblings have to sort of work together to be able to keep a part of their history and their legacy of whom they descend from and not have that taken away from them. Now, this next book I've had on my TBR for quite some time, and I honestly forgot why I bought it until I was going through my TBR the other day, my physical TBR, and I read the synopsis and I was like, right, that is why I got this book. And that is because this book severely reminds me of one of my favorite books, and that is Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. So this book, Hester, reminds me of that book, and this is Hester by Laurie, Lico, Albanese. So if you've read Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman, which if you don't know who Alice Hoffman is, come on you guys, it is the author who wrote Practical Magic. So this book reminds me of Magic Lessons because it follows also a young girl who sets sail from Scotland in the 1800s to Salem, Massachusetts. So it is following our main protagonist, whose name is Isabel, and Isabel was supposed to set sail to Salem, Massachusetts with her husband or one of her partner. However, her husband or boyfriend, whoever he is, sort of leaves her hanging, and she still goes to Salem, and there she meets another man whose name is, what's his name? Nathaniel. However, Nathaniel comes from a line, I think well, actually, I don't know. He is connected to the Salem Witches, and also Isabel has some dark secrets herself. So this is sort of about their relationship and all these secrets and the Salem witch trials and creepy things, you guys. All right, friends, so that was actually my physical TBR. Now on to books that I don't physically have copies of, but I do plan to read this fall spooky season. Starting with the first one is titled Salt and Broom by Sharon Lynn Fisher. This is actually a Jane Eyre retelling, which for me, I love retellings. They're just always a good option because you already kind of know what the story, or at least the concept of the story, is about. Now this is set during October, which perfect for this fall spooky season. So we are following our main protagonist, whose name is Jane Eyre, and Jane likes to craft herbs and she loves to create protective charms. And one day Jane gets hired by someone whose name is Edward, and I think Edward is seeking some of her expertise, and of course one thing leads to another and they fall for each other, and one is no good for the other. All you guys need to know is that this is a Jane Eyre retelling and it's witchy. Now this next book I feel like is a really cool concept. This book is titled The Lighthouse Witches by C.J. Cooke. Now in this novel we are following, I believe, a mom who has 3 daughters who gets hired to go paint a mural at this very old lighthouse. And this lighthouse has been said that used to, actually I don't know if it's said that it used to belong to witches, but it is a lighthouse where a lot of people have gone missing. But apparently I think it does have a backstory that it used to belong to witches, something like that. So this mom goes to the lighthouse, she stays there to be able to paint this mural, and 2 of her daughters go missing. And I believe years and years later they return without any memory of what happened to them. This is also labeled as a chilling gothic thriller, which to me, again you guys, that's enough for me to just add to cart. Now this next book is totally my vibe, and I love when the setting is like Puritan, just back in the day type of world setting, and that is Hour of the Witch by Chris Bohjalian. This is set in Boston in 1662, and we are following our main protagonist, whose name is Mary. And Mary is married to a very not nice man who is very abusive. And of course, Mary has a fascination for herbal remedies. Her being the smart person that she is, one day she has enough of her abusive husband and she decides to do something about it. But something goes very wrong when a boy whom she treated with herbs ends up dying. As you guys can guess, you guys probably know what happens because this is set in 1662. Now this next book had to just be added to this stack because it is absolutely a masterpiece. I have watched the show that is based on this series, and that is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. If you love dark academia, this book is for you. I seen the entire show, at least what is out up until today, and it is beautiful. It has all of the dark academic vibes and I absolutely love it. Definitely want to read the books. I think there's like 5 of these out. I forgot how many there are out, but there's definitely a few out. Dobby's making a small appearance really quick. Hi, buddy. I need to get him a witchy hat. Should I get him a witchy hat? So in this story, we are following our main protagonist, whose name is Diana. And Diana is a scholar. She goes to Oxford, and there she ends up, I think she's doing some sort of research, and while she's at the library she ends up stumbling upon this old magical manuscript that apparently no one can access, but for some reason she can access. And one thing leads to another. She ends up discovering that she is a very powerful witch. And also at Oxford she ends up meeting, what's his name, Matthew. She ends up meeting Matthew, and Matthew, guess what, he's a vampire, you guys. So Diana and Matthew end up formulating a very spicy relationship. I think it has at first that enemies to lovers type of trope, but they end up falling for each other. And upon Diana finding this very secret book at the library that no one has access to but apparently her, stirs up a whole bunch of vampires and witches and all kinds of creatures who are after this book. I have to read this book this spooky season because it's a classic witchy book. You cannot say you read witchy books if you haven't read A Discovery of Witches. And I haven't, so I need to do that. Now this next book, friends, sounds so amazing. Now if you love magical circuses, this one is for you. And that book is The Ladies of the Secret Circus by Constance Sawyers. Now this follows, I believe, two women's lives during different decades. The first one is set during Paris in 1925, and I believe the other one is set in Virginia in 2005, and I think both of these women are related. Now the first one that is set during Paris in 1925, we are following our main protagonist whose family owns a magical circus. Our main character's name is Cecile. She is bound to her family's magical and strange circus until one day she falls in love with the painter and thus stirs a love affair. And then we fast forward to our other main protagonist who is set in 2005, whose name is Laura. And then one day Laura's husband disappears on the day of their wedding. And in search for her husband, Laura comes across these secret journals that belong to her great grandmother, something like that, and that detail a family curse that they've never been able to get rid of. Honestly, just give me anything with magical circuses. I love that theme so much. And now down to our last book, friends. That is The Midnight Witch by Paula Brackston. This is a fantasy historical fiction that I believe is based during the Edwardian London era, during the days of World War I. We are following our main protagonist whose name is Lilith, and Lilith is the daughter of the 6th Duke of Radnor. And Lilith is engaged to a very eligible and well-known bachelor in London. She is also a witch, and when her father dies, her brother ends up taking the role as Duke, but she ends up taking over her father's title of being the head witch of their coven. That is right, friends. This is a family of witches who have a coven. And not only that, Lilith is also experienced in necromancy, which honestly, like, come on. Yeah, of course I want to read it because it has necromancy. Who are we kidding? But of course there are these other covens who want to take over their coven and take over their power, and so Lilith has to do everything in her power now that her father's gone to be able to protect their coven. So like I mentioned, Lilith is set to be married. However, she ends up meeting this very full of secrets fella whose name is Broom, who is neither a witch nor a member of any coven. There are a lot of secrets, there are a lot of promises being broken, there is betrayal, all of the things that I love in a book, that is. All right, friends, those are the 13 dark witchy books that I am planning to sprinkle on to my fall and spooky TBR. Let me know if any of these books sounded good to you guys. Let me know if you are, let me know which ones you might be adding to your TBR. Also, if you have any other witchy book recommendations, please write those down below. I would love to check those out, add them to my TBR, and continue growing my never-ending TBR. Like I mentioned, this was not the video that I had planned for this week, but I think it was a necessary video that needed to exist here on my channel, so I hope that you guys don't mind. I have lots of more cozy videos coming your way. I am very excited. I am very motivated. Thank you so much for being here, friends. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Remember that you can create the life that you want because you so deserve it. I will be seeing you in another video very, very soon, friends. Until then, take care and bye for now.